All of us.
All of us.
All of us.
All of us are lost.
All of us are lost.
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 Hello and welcome to All of Us Are Lost, a rewatch podcast delving into the mysteries experienced by the survivors of Oceanic Flight 8115. I'm Kat, and joining me on this journey through black smoke, polar bears, is Andy. And today we are here to discuss the season 2 episodes Abandoned and the Other 48 Days, in which we finally get to learn about the new people, which people who've listened and watched along so far is all I've wanted to know. So, I don't know about you, Andy, but I'm actually quite excited to talk about these 2 episodes for once.
Yeah, definitely. I think it certainly ramps up a bit more. Would this be the first, maybe not the straight away, but the first episode where we've not had actual flashbacks as well, potentially, in the second episode we'll discuss. So maybe a bit of change of
Yeah, I mean, it's all kind of one big flashback, isn't it? But it's like flashing back to the island. It's not going back before the island at all. So yeah, I think it's definitely the first one of those.
Yeah, maybe a wee bit of change of tack with them, especially, we've mentioned how slow we felt this series has been so far. But I think these 2 definitely ramp it up a wee bit.
Yeah, I mean, we'll start obviously with the first one, which is Abandoned. The flashback is Shannon, which again I don't necessarily think is a particularly interesting flashback. It starts, with her losing her father, which we've already seen previously within one of Jack's flashbacks. This time we see, I think it's hilarious how they're just trying to fit in other islanders into everyone's flashbacks now. So Shannon is being given the news that her dad has died, and Jack is seen like in the background, sort of like excusing himself, like in the background to go off somewhere else. Like they really are hammering home that these people are all interconnected before the island. And it's, it touches upon her relationship with her stepmother, who is just, I mean, she's just a bit of a bitch, really. That's put too fine a point on it. This poor teenage girl has lost her father, and isn't going to get any inheritance because they had a living trust. And you get to see a bit more of her sort of earlier relationship with Boone, kind of before it went sour. And I mean, it's quite obvious from already here that Boone is in love with her, is willing to do anything for her. So it was nice to see him back with his ridiculous long hair and curtains. But I don't really think it added too much more, I don't think.
No, it maybe shows you why Shannon is shown as being kind of insecure about the way other people think about her, that we've seen maybe in earlier flashbacks with Boone and with her time with Saeed on the island. But yeah, it adds very little, apart from just a slight development of the relationship with Shannon and Boone. Boone clearly still involved in this living trust that they have. But I don't know how these things would work personally. I've never had that level of money. I'm assuming he still just gets given money by his mum. So the golden
Yeah, I think
boy
it's
still gets
because it's now she's in sole control of the money, so she can put the money where she wants it to, and doesn't want to give it to Shannon because she sees Shannon as being spoiled and flighty. Like during this flashback, she's a ballet teacher, and she's got aspirations of going to some scholarship. And through conversation with the stepmother, she just sees this as the next fad, the next thing. Shannon's obviously been one of those people that struggled to find, what she wants to do in life, and she just sees this as another one of her flights of fancy. And I think she thinks that by cutting her off, it's going to teach her, how to be responsible and how to, to look after herself. And it's like, well, to a point, but like, she can't go from of having all of this stuff to she can't pay her rent or anything. She doesn't seem like the spoiled Shannon that she appears to be on the island in this episode. She's quite happy being a teacher. She just wants to go to school. So it's kind of, it almost feels like the stepmother has created this other version of Shannon through doing this.
Yeah, yeah, maybe her reliance on, like we've seen before, a reliance on Boone maybe develops a bit of incapability in herself as she gets older. It's yeah, it adds. I feel like flashbacks this season have been very limited in shown as anything. Like, and this is just another one of those slight character development, but not a huge amount. Um, and I think yeah, it's just it, again, it feels a bit filler. Hate using that word, but it definitely does feel it.
Yeah, and I think that's a thing that's kind of mirrored on the island to a degree. I feel like Shannon is a character that they've never really known what to do with. You know, we've discussed
Mm,
before that originally there was supposed to be a romance between Saeed and Kate, and then they decided not to follow through with that, and then they pivoted and they placed Saeed with Shannon, which is a couple I never really quite understood. Like I could understand from her point of view, you know, she's always used men, particularly older men, to help her survive. So it makes sense that she would partner up with him. But I've always been a bit confused as to why Saeed would, because he doesn't strike me as the sort of older man that needs a pretty young girl on his arm. You know, there's plenty of other
mm,
male characters in TV and film that I could happily attribute that to, but Saeed doesn't seem that way inclined. So it's just a really odd partnership, and it's only been a month. Like it just feels very short a space of time for people to be coupling up. But then I don't know. I never watched Love Island,
yeah.
but they get married within a week or something on that show, right?
You're asking the completely wrong person. Like, and even my immediate family have nothing to so. Unfortunately, to my detriment, I'm out with the Love Island discourse. Um, I wonder with Side, it's maybe helping the helpless is the way he maybe sees it with Shannon. You know, he's had his previous relationship and she wasn't helpless, but she was a prisoner. And he done his best to kind of get her out of that situation. And he's maybe seeing a sort of similarity with Shannon in terms of that. And he's attached himself onto that. Like that's more of his personality having than Shannon being the one that kind of attaches herself onto him. It's almost like Saeed's the one that's very much pushing the relationship. I could be wrong, but it just feels like maybe he's came into that and sees Shannon as someone that he can help who he doesn't feel has that ability like herself, which fairly or unfairly, as you said, it's only been a month, so they don't have a full grasp of who everyone is at all.
Yeah, and Shannon, we'll get to the end of the episode in a little bit, but Shannon for the main part in this episode is she's she keeps seeing what, you know, she believes that Walt is on the island somewhere, and
Mm.
she gets Vincent to, I mean, Vincent is probably the worst tracker dog ever. She gives him Walt's scent and he walks her to Boone's grave. And there's this whole sort of, she's kind of on the outs with Saeed because he doesn't believe that she's seeing what she's seeing. He thinks that it's all tied to her grief over Boone.
Mhm. Yeah. So Walt's talking at this point. I remember you mentioned before. He says, "Does he say don't go in the hatch or something along those
That's what he
lines
said.
from the
He said,
previous?"
he said, yeah, I think the first one it was like, don't press the button, I think it was something, but it was like
Won't press the button,
backwards.
right? Yeah, yeah. And I'm not sure what it says here. I don't know if that's the same thing. It doesn't. It didn't come up anyway when I had the subtitles on. So I don't know if that was a conscious decision to not have it come up when it had done before. Yeah, it's you can understand Shannon's frustration and you can understand Side's kind of skepticism, but they've all seen strange things in this island, so it takes Side a while to kind of come round to her way of thinking. In fact, it's almost to the point where he has to believe her, or he's going to lose her. It feels like that he then
Yeah,
decides he's going to believe her, and it's at that point that he actually sees Walt as well in like a kind of a twist of events. they both see him. So is it an island manifestation? Is it Walt projecting himself? You know, we know there's something special about Walt because the others the others that we've seen have taken him. So is he using himself as a projection? Is he psychic? Is he, you know, this is one of the things that brings up more questions. The fact that the Shannon thing could be the connection with Vincent, but when other people out with that too are then seeing him, it just opens a whole can of worms.
Mm. Yeah, and then sort of moving away from Shannon and Saeed, we don't really get much of our normal islanders. There's a
Mm,
weird sort of tension bubbling between Claire and Charlie and Locke. So Shannon, so she has a nightmare. She wakes up screaming, and a lot of the islanders go running over to check on her, including Claire, who has also brought Aaron, and kind of Charlie sort of reprimands
mm,
her, saying, always going to be grizzly all day tomorrow, and then cut to tomorrow, and he is, and Claire's kind of moaning to Lark, and she quite rightly points out that as we just said, she doesn't know Charlie. They were strangers like a couple of months ago, and now they've kind of become a family. She's like, she doesn't remember marrying Charlie, but that's definitely the role that he's taking. And then when Charlie sees Locke and Claire bonding over how to swaddle Aaron, and Charlie is
mm,
clearly very jealous, and like he doesn't seem to believe in Claire's abilities as a mother, which I think is something that a lot of new mothers experience. Everybody, when you're a new parent, everybody thinks they know how to parent your child better than you because well, we did it this way in my day and stuff. And I think there's an element of that, but it's very good. Why is a junkie musician suddenly like a font of knowledge and parenthood?
mm. Yeah, and Locke is very barbed with these kind of retort to Charlie at one point. He said, he's saying how Claire, Charlie's saying, oh, she knows she's got a lot to learn about parenthood. And he's, well, you were a junkie. And Charlie's an ex-junkie, and Locke kind of just gives him a look. And you're never really, I think the thing is, they say you're always an addict. You're never, it's just your willpower to keep yourself away from it. And we know that Charlie has a stash. So whether he's used it or not at this point, we don't know. But he does have a stash in the Virgin Mary statues. So yeah, it feels like another Locke test. Like, does Locke know that he's got that on him? Because Locke knows all. It seems it's like he seems to have a kind of general all-knowing aura around him when he's on here. Um, and it wouldn't be surprising if he knew that Charlie had grabbed one of these statues and was thinking potentially about using again and getting himself back into that habit. And yeah, Charlie with Claire is it definitely feels like another possible case of them underusing the kind of female character in this episode. I think Claire doesn't get a lot of agency. It's more about the two men arguing about what's best for her. It's more about Locke's not really. Locke is actually trying to be an element of helpful, but then it's the kind of the paranoia maybe that Charlie's got around it that's the main focus instead of giving Claire maybe a bit more agency and how she wants to raise her child. It's the two guys discussing it as well.
Mm. I do think it's interesting that this series we've seen Locke interacting a bit more with the women. So we've got him here with Claire, and then
Mm.
in the previous episode, Anne found Locke stumbles across Sun as she's in the middle of destroying her garden, and it's like, okay, so it's we saw him trying to recruit all the menfolk in series one. So is he now trying to shift his attention to the women? They're going to be the deciding factor between this kind of him versus Jack thing that was bubbling away last season, that's sure to come up again this time.
Yeah. And I think as well, Locke only has visions of staying on the island. I don't think he has any interest in escaping. He doesn't have any interest in rescue. So naturally, maybe he's thinking would go, well, you need men and women on an island if you want a community to flourish, and you don't want just angry, testosterone fueled men. You need to have couplings and you need to be able to build families, to build a community. maybe that is his thinking around it. He feels like maybe he's got his group of guys that are on his side already, and now he needs to look towards future generations, possibly.
Oh, that's giving the end of 28 Days Later vibes, you know. John Matt's
Yeah.
going to morph into Christopher Eccleston and start chaining the women
Aye.
up and making them breed. Ugh. Anyway,
Yeah.
on the other side of the island, we have
Mm.
got, we know that the group are making their way over to our core group. Uh, and during this journey, you find out that this other group, they don't go into the jungle. They've always kind of kept out of the center, which I guess in a way explains why the two groups have never met, because that
Mm.
was something that's like, well, we've seen like Locke and Kate, and they've gone running like deep into the jungle. Why have they never stumbled across these other people? And it's because these other people stay the hell away from there because of the others. But then because of Sawyer's injury, they have no choice but to go into that territory. And again, we get some more like these people are terrified of these others,
Yeah.
properly terrified.
Yeah. And Ana Lucia and Mr. Echo have a bit of a sort of standoff together because the reason he wants to cut through the jungle is because if he doesn't, Sawyer won't survive. He needs to get medical attention. They have to build a stretcher for him because he's completely out cold, and it's shown that they've had the experience they've mentioned before. I think Ana Lucia. I don't know. I can't remember who exactly. Maybe she's talking to Michael. I can't remember exactly. Um, they came the first night and took 3 people, and then 2 weeks later they took 9 more. So her wanting to keep to the coast is understandable. Echo just seems to be a very compassionate guy, as well as being an absolute man mountain, a friendly giant sort of stereotype about him. A really intriguing character. I'm really looking forward to seeing more of him. And yeah, just it's almost like a duality between, because Echo seems, it's kind of not too, well, it's not similar to Jack and Locke, because I don't see Mr. Echo as being sort of tied to the island the way that Locke is, but he seems to be more spiritually influenced and more introverted. And then you've got maybe a bit more of a firebrand in Ana Lucia, who's more reactionary, a bit more aggressive, wanting to be more on the front foot if things are going wrong. But there is that duality with those two as well, who both seem like, again, the leaders of a lot smaller group of people, but still a group that are looking up to them.
Mm. And again, we have mention of a Goodwin. We found a body in the last episode. You know, Jin was told it's Goodwin, and then we have another comment here of, "Do you remember Goodwin?" And everybody kind of falls silent. So again, there's this mystery of, well, who is Goodwin? What
Mm.
happened to this guy? We know that people have been taken. What happened to this person? I mean, we know he's ended up dead. But what on earth happened there? And then there's this great scene where they are lifting Sawyer on the stretcher, like up this hill, or this like rough terrain, and then they get to the top, and it's where Cindy, and just like that, one of them has just vanished. And I
Hmm.
guess the thinking is that the others have taken her, and that's how
Yeah.
quickly you can be taken by an other. You're there 1 second and then you're gone the next. She didn't cry out, nobody heard, she was just gone. And I think it's at that moment where Michael, Jin, and Sawyer begin to realize that, okay, yeah, there might be something in their fear because they have seen
Mm.
it firsthand now.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is again Ana Lucia and Echo. She blames Echo for wanting to go through the jungle, and we start hearing the whispers. And at this point, I'd probably be glad if I was Sawyer. You're out cold. You don't have that level of fear that everyone's going to be experiencing, and it leads to a kind of chaos and panic, and Ana Lucia just shouting to everyone to run, which, again, in a situation like this, maybe not the best, but because you don't want to get split up. If you're going to get split up, you're going to get taken. It would seem to be. But it's interesting, like these people, we've seen glimpses, we'll see a glimpse of their feet with Jin and Mr. Echo when they were trying to find Michael. We've heard whispers, we've heard from Russo about the others, and now we're seeing them we're not seeing them in action, but we're seeing their tactics, if that's the right word, when they've taken Cindy. So they're becoming a real threat now, and the tension around them is building up. And we are kind of like we had with the shiny new toy with the tail survivors. They're just encouraging and wanting to see more of them and find out more about them. I've totally forgot about the hatch. Like that's gone now. Like, they
Yeah.
get some cereal. They're fine.
Exactly, like Desmond, he's running off somewhere, he's a distant
Yeah.
memory, where's he in all this? But yeah, like the others definitely do. Like we saw Ethan take Claire, and as you say, we've heard
Mm,
stories from Russo, but to suddenly see like this woman was here and then she wasn't there. And
yeah.
it's not even like the audience see it, but the characters miss it. Like the way that they frame the cameras is, she's there and then she's not there. So we're just as back-footed. And yeah, then the whispering starts, and then we get the rain, and in all
Mm,
of the confusion, Ana Lucia collides with Saeed and Shannon, and panicked. Ana Lucia has a gun and she just shoots, and that's the end of dear old Shannon, and she dies in Saeed's arms, which is sad,
yeah.
but because I've never particularly bought into their relationship, I can't quite buy into how devastated Saeed is by it.
Mm,
It's obviously, anybody dies in your arms, it's going to be traumatic, but I
yeah.
feel like it was meant to land much harder and be a much more gut wrenching. Because when Boone died, I think we both said, like, although we'd kind of like poked fun of him for being like the golden retriever and stuff, like his death it was really emotional. It was really sad. It was
Mm,
like this character had so much potential. But I think with Shannon, it was like we don't really know what to do with her. Shall
mm,
we kill her? It just kind of felt like once Boone was gone, there was nothing that could be done with her
mm,
anymore.
yeah. I think the kind of final shot we get with Naveen Andrews, he sells it really well. Like the emotion on his face, and in fact, pure anger and rage, and it. But yeah, Shannon's kind of death scene. It's only the second big character, main character since the start that we've had die. We've had Boone. We've now had the siblings both go, and yeah, I think I remember it hitting a lot harder back then
Mm,
because again, looking at it from a whole different perspective, watching a main character dying TV back then wasn't the done thing, and if they did, they'd be brought back within a heartbeat, like things like Buffy. Um, and so this time on the rewatch is you can feel Saeed's anger and you can understand his anger due to the way that their relationship has been depicted. Maybe not developed, but certainly been depicted. So that is kind of done well again by Naveen Andrews. Yeah, it doesn't. It's kind of like that's a shame, but
yeah,
it's not. Oh my god! It's it's
yeah,
it's it's a shame for the characters, but for us, it's more of a. It's horrible for the character, sorry, but it's kind of just like oh, poor. I can't think of a dual name for them, but I mean, it would be Shannon, wouldn't it? 'Cause it's same first letter. But aye, it doesn't land the way I think they would have hoped on a rewatch, certainly anyway.
yeah. I think my memory had this happening slightly later in the series. I thought that
All
she
right, okay.
had a bit more to do before she like I remember that she died and she died in the second series, but I thought that
Mm,
she had more that happened with her before that. But all she's kind of really done is looked after the dog, known that the bottle got returned, and she's seen Walt a couple of times. So there's not really been any any development for her, which is a massive shame.
yeah. I mean, for me, I thought she'd get killed by the smoke monster. Like, I thought
Oh
that
yeah,
vision was her. Like, sorry, I've got a fly right in front of my line. So for me, her getting shot was probably a bit of a shock. But yeah, it feels like attaching the Walt thing to her as well seemed a bit pointless. And then they've just went, right, we don't know what to do with her. Let's also make Saeed see him, and then we can develop that plot further on because Shannon's just not going anywhere. Because she doesn't even seem didn't seem to be that caring of Vincent either. It's just a chore that she has to do. Ah, there's the dog again. Right, I've got to take him a walk. Yeah,
yeah.
it
I
felt
do
very,
think it's
yeah,
interesting.
let's get Walt somewhere else.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting that it is both Boone and Shannon that are the first to go, who are with the exception of Walt, are the two youngest cast members on the island. And I think that it feels like they were
Mm,
brought on to draw in like the teen crowd. Guess what would now
yeah.
be like the CW audience. Like, oh look, there's this, pretty, you know, young these two models basically, there's one for the girls, there's one for the boys. And
Mhm,
then I guess maybe they realized during series one that the teens weren't really the demographic. The demographic was skewed slightly older. So they
mhm.
didn't need to keep these characters around.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, it just feels like it was very flippant in their use. And Boone, I think, had a lot more to do. You know, Boone had the involvement with the Hatch and Locke, and Locke almost taking him on as a prodigy, but also willing to put him in harm's way. Shannon's kind of just been there, and they stuck the Walt thing on her, and it didn't really feel like much. So they've passed it on, and now her story's done. Really, I suppose.
Mm. And as it is done, that means that we get our first Life After Lost of the second season. So
Mm,
obviously, Shannon Rutherford is played or was played by Maggie Grace. She didn't really have much to do before Lost, so Lost kind of was her big break. And for her, it really was kind of a big break. From this, I mean, she was in the unfortunate Fog remake, which she probably won't want us to talk about. So we'll move on. She was Liam Neeson's daughter that got taken in the Taken series, which I guess is where a lot of people know her from.
yeah.
She turned up for the last couple of Twilight Saga films. She
Okay.
was like one of the wider sort of vampire that they all bring to do the big like final battle with the Volturi. She was like one of the gifted ones. I think she had like a dalliance with Rami Malek's character or something. I seem to remember that they were definitely in like the same sort of circles. She's been
Is
in
she a Volturi? Is she
no,
a Volturi?
she's one of the ones that was Dakota Fanning. Um, not a try hard, but I do I do know her stuff.
Yeah,
Um, no,
I've
she's
watched
one of
them
the
all
ones that was
once.
brought in. Yeah, she was
Mm,
like one. I think she's like Mariana Burning from The Descent. I think she's like her sister. There's like, yeah, I
right.
don't, there's Twilight fans watching this screaming like the character's name and stuff, and we apologize, but slightly
Yeah.
too odd for demographic. But she was in Californication with David Duchovny. She
Yeah.
was in a great little B movie disaster film called Hurricane Heist,
All right.
which is a switch off brain and enjoy. It is exactly what it says on the tin. Some robbers try to do a heist during a hurricane, because why not? Um,
Always only go well.
and yeah, exactly. Most recently, she was in Suits LA, which I think got sort of cancelled after one season. But I think her biggest or like longest running thing after Lost was she turned up in Fear the Walking Dead for a little while. I kind of gave up on Fear
Okay.
the Walking Dead after about the third season, but I think she probably she literally done like series four and then was in it for quite a long run. So
Mm,
she's done quite a few sort of high profile films and TV shows and things. So I don't think it's hurt her that she went out
mm,
during the second season, in the same way that it hasn't remotely hurt Ian Somerhalder going out in season one. Maybe these
yeah.
younger actors had the right idea with use this show as a springboard to
Yeah.
a wider career.
Yeah. I only ever watched original Walking Dead series, and I got so far into it that I stopped before the last series and just couldn't be bothered because I was so sick of it
Yep.
and just read a synopsis. So the Fear stuff and all the new series is I've just gave up. But
Yeah,
good for her.
we got 2 or 3 episodes into the final season and we're just like, I can't, I just tap out. I can't.
Yeah.
And yeah, Fear the Walking Dead we watched because for a time I worked at E1 and I got like a welcome package when I joined, and part of the
Okay.
welcome package was like a 2 or 3 season bundle of Fear the Walking Dead. So we watched it because we had it. Um
Fair enough.
Hilariously, the first series, they had the discs the wrong way around in the box. So we actually watched like episode 5 first, and and then realized after we finished it. So we went back and started watching the first 5 episodes, and then we're like, oh, actually, we haven't missed
Mm.
anything. Oh, okay. So yeah, it didn't hook us in to continue after that. And yeah, we've not done any of the Daryl or City or whatever. It's Book of
Negan and
Carol,
all
and no,
that. Yeah.
we've not. There's just
Yeah.
too much.
Yeah.
But you know,
There won't be an All of Us or Walking Dead spin off after this once we're done with Lost anyway.
not from these
Because
people. It won't. No,
no, no, no,
not at
no.
all.
Oh.
Um, but yeah, but like it sort of ends the episode ends on this cliffhanger of, Shannon dying dead in Saeed's arms, and Ana Lucia is the person that's pulled the trigger, and it's like, oh my god, what's going to happen here, because they've been brought across this island to join these people and they've just killed one of them. Like that's not going to go down, especially with Saeed. We've seen him torture Sawyer.
Mm.
Like, quick, let's get the next episode on. But next episode is not going to continue on. It's going to rewind you all the way back to the plane crash.
Mm. Yeah, the other 48 days, which, as we said, shiny new toys, so we're getting in the
Yeah.
background. So it's not a bad thing. We get a great opening scene with the tail crash. I
Mm.
thought that was really great watching, and um, again, has Ana Lucia and Mr. Echo at the forefront of trying to help everyone. Mr. Echo trying his best to save as many people as he can. We see a teddy, which we have seen before,
Mm.
briefly next to a small child's ankles as Mr. Echo and Jin were hiding in the bush. So maybe I'm assuming it's the same one. Um, and there's also a young girl that Ana Lucia helps. And yeah, it's a really good, really effective opening to this episode. And I really like the kind of structure change that they have. As I said, this is the one where they don't have an off-island flashback for I think the first time. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that'll be the first episode without it. Um, and it felt smoother because of it. Because it, the certainly in this series, the flashbacks have added so little that they've
Yeah.
stunted the episodes almost, and the episodes have been quite slow enough as it is. So not having these off-island interactions just allowed this to play out really well. And this has probably been the strongest of the series so far for me, anyway.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And yeah, that opening is great. And it's nice to see that how different it is to the pilot. These guys
Mm.
were just dropped into water, it's completely different. You see, they didn't have, a fuselage to like hide out in, they didn't have anything to make shelter with. They have, got absolutely basic, it's a class system. The front of the plane were all, the higher up, well-to-do people, the doctors and things, and these are the people that were slumming it in economy. And that's
Yeah.
mirrored on the island. The other survivors have got supplies, they've got shelters, they've all built their little like shacks and stuff. They set up little shanty towns. These guys have absolutely nothing. They are just there. They can't change their clothes. They're just day in, day out. And yeah, I think for me, watching this whole episode just made me want to go, I would have maybe have preferred the second series to have just been their story. And then, join back up
Could have been, yeah.
with, at least maybe for like the first half of the series. Like, let's get, instead of all of these 48 days shoehorned into one episode, let's take it for to a mid-season. Let's take it for like 10 episodes and,
Mhm.
really explore the dynamics of everybody and then have them hook up with our people. I mean, I guess that's probably what they would do with TV in this day and age.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought it was fascinating.
Yeah, I think back then, everyone, if you'd had the first, say, 10 episodes just about the other survivors, I think a lot of people would have maybe turned off, and that would have been a death knell for it,
Mm,
because you wouldn't have had the Jack and Kate and Sawyer triangle, which you've not had anyway, because they're all
yeah.
separate, but it wouldn't have given the hope for that. And creatively, 20 odd years ago, I don't think people would have taken that well. It's like, I really like the structure of this episode. Like, as you said, it would have been good to have it episodic maybe for them, but the actual structure where it is just narratively bang bang, and you're getting each segment is day 1, day 5, day 10, and you're just seeing them slowly but surely become. You don't see any kind of emaciation or anything like that, but you see certainly mentally worn as the days are going. You get uh as we said, Mr. Echo's kind of this heroic figure at the start, dragging people out the water, trying to save as many as he can. And he, they then, there's a kind of switch about with that where Echo's standing over 2 dead bodies. And it's not given the time to really ferment and develop, but it gives a kind of insight into his character and just the peril that they're in. They've clearly landed next to a group of people that either don't want them there or do want them there, maybe to use them. Um, yeah, it's. I think it was a really great episode, and just the quickness of it maybe could have been dealt with better. Even over 2 or 3 episodes might not have been a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and we get Goodwin. We are introduced to Goodwin.
Mm,
He works with the Peace Corps, and him and Ana Lucia kind of immediately bond, almost like in a Jack and Kate sort of way. They go into they're introduced because Goodwin calls her into the woods because he's found Bernard stuck up a tree, and they're kind of immediately bonded by that. He seems to know some basic survival skills, so he seems like a good egg that we can rely on. And then enjoy as as the days go on. And like you say, that first night, Mr. Echo is attacked and then kills these other men, and just the paranoia that already starts to breed within the group. And then you have uh, Mr. Echo takes a vow of silence after this, so
mm.
they can get no information out of him, which is not. I appreciate, his faith and his beliefs that he feels that he has to, atone for what he has done. But maybe Mr. Echo, just before that, you could maybe just like give a description maybe of what these people look like, just something to help
Yeah,
these people. There's kids there, Echo, there's kids. Um,
yeah,
and I just think
and
that,
it's
no, go on.
no, just the fact as well. Yeah, the first night, they've just had the trauma of a plane crash, and now some of them are going missing, and one of the people on the plane has murdered 2 people who were they survivors. We don't think they are, but well, we certainly don't think they are. But the people in that situation, we don't know. Um, yeah, it's a whole bombardment of just trauma within 12 hours. Must have been an awful day.
Definitely. And the poor Cindy gets like given the kids because she's the
Mm,
air hostess. I think it's just the fact that they are so much younger than Walt as well, and like they don't have a parent with them. Because
yeah,
their mum, they're meeting their mum in Los Angeles.
LA.
So these two
Mm.
kids were flying on their own, and it's
Yeah,
just.
Is that a thing
Like
that you would do?
that's it's a thing they do in I know it's a thing they do in America. Like kids can fly alone. Like I think like they have to have like a member of like the air team sort of sit with them or whatever. But yeah, they get put
Maybe.
on by like a parent at one
Yeah.
end and collected by a parent at the other end. It's terrifying. You know, I wouldn't put
Yeah.
my kid on a bus for like a stop,
No.
let alone on a plane for
Maybe
like
maybe
12
pre
hours.
nine
But
eleven that pre 9/11 that might have happened because Americans used airplanes like buses, like because the transport for work and things like that was so it was just such a regular occurrence. But halfway across the world or all the way across the world, that's crazy.
yeah, yeah. I think as the paranoia builds, there's one of the other survivors, Nathan. I think he's a great red
Mm,
herring because, I mean, he does everything he can to make himself look guilty. Like he goes off for like long toilet breaks alone, which is against the rules, and it then becomes this whole thing of like I don't remember seeing him on the plane. So there's
mm,
that mistrust, and this group go Lord of the Flies so quickly. I mean, okay, Saeed tortures Sawyer, but this group go proper Lord of the Flies, turning on each other. They dig a pit just so that they can put like Nathan in it to
yeah.
try and find out what's happened to these people that have been taken because they believe that it is it is him. Um,
Mm,
which is like again, this is obviously you say that the days are coming up. This isn't many days in. There's not that many days in before they're doing this.
yeah. Yeah, yeah, this is the point, I suppose, where the kids have been taken, haven't they? This is after the second night the others have arrived, taking 9 of them, and they find a
Yes,
list of the
yeah.
survivors' names. Hmm.
Yes, it's like 2 weeks. This is 2 weeks in.
Yeah,
2 weeks in, they're
yeah,
digging a hole to put another human being in to interrogate them
yeah,
as to why there is a
yeah,
list and why they've taken
yeah,
people.
yeah. It's yeah. Well, I did think Nathan was a good red herring. The yeah. Again, this is coming from it in a rewatch perspective. There is aspects that are very I feel like it maybe leans into him a wee bit too hard. But
Yeah.
he does make himself very yeah, very untrustworthy. But for the kind of viewing audience, uh, it, aye, I'll try not to say too much.
I just kind of feel like if again this had been over a couple of episodes, they could have really like built that mistrust like a
Yeah,
lot better,
yeah,
particularly around his character. Because it transpires that he's just somebody that like he doesn't want to share his life story. He's been through this traumatic ordeal of a plane crash, and he just wants to get on with like he was want to get on with things. I think he's the one that wants to do the signal fire and stuff. Like he wants to be saved. I mean, I think that's
mm,
something as well about this group. But that first night, because they have Cindy, they already know the
yeah,
stuff that took our guys a couple of episodes. They already know of course no one's going to be looking for us here because they don't
yeah,
know that we're here. So it's quite interesting that although they don't have the shelter, they do have a little bit more knowledge. Uh, and just when we think, Nathan, maybe they are on something with Nathan. Nope, it's Goodwin. Goodwin outs himself by just killing Nathan, just offing
mm,
him. And I mean, I feel like he does a better job to a degree of slipping in than Ethan did. But I feel that that's because wherever this group landed, they landed much closer to like other HQ. So they were able to immediately send somebody in to act as a survivor. Whereas Ethan, they took a while, they took longer to find them. And then Ethan had to
mm,
just kind of blend in with the mix up when everybody started going like team beach, team cave. That's when he
yeah,
suddenly sort of turned up. So I think Ethan had a slightly harder gig, but just imagine
mm,
again, just imagine that Goodwin reveal coming like 2 or 3 episodes in. it would have been like,
Yeah.
oh, what? Like he was our Jack,
Yeah.
and now, oh, boo.
Mm. Yeah. As you said, the Ethan thing was like we've had Goodwin since the start of this episode almost. Ethan was kind of like 5 episodes in, and remember Ethan, the guy, the
Yeah,
Ethan, he's been here, yeah, Ethan. Oh, of course, Ethan. Yeah, he's a great guy. This one has been a bit more natural in terms of his introduction, but as you said, because it's sped up so much, we are a bit wary as well, I think. And when I first clocked him, I went, yeah, I think that's from what I remember, he's the one. And because knowing that and the way he's kind of trying to plant himself in so much, you do get that feeling off of him. Again, different for them, different for a first time viewer, but you get that feeling of him being very forceful with his and relationship with Ana Lucia. But it would have hit harder, yeah. But again, I think this is just a good summation because the way they've left the last episode, you couldn't have had a couple of episodes of this. So if you're going to commit to it, you do it at the start. But then again, it's the viewership thing. So because they don't want to leave the resolution of the Shannon side and Ana Lucia thing too long, they have to batter through this. And it works well. There's still a lot of tension in it. There's still a lot of mystery and drama and a lot of violence, which isn't always something that we've seen in the show, and excitement as well. And it does work well, but it's just a wee bit rushed. But they find shelter at least, so that's something inside a thing that says quarantine on the inside, which is always good. Another
yeah,
Dharma initiative with an arrow this
yeah.
time.
And theirs doesn't take a trip to Dynamite to get into. They can just get into theirs. I mean, it's not as bountiful with food, but they
Yeah.
can get straight in there. Um, and yeah, it's obviously we know that there's like several posts around the island. That's what we've been told previously, and here we are seeing another one of them, which is great. And then we get this. We get day 41. We get confirmation
Mm,
that it was the people from the Tale who were talking to Boone on the radio, and it was indeed
yeah.
Bernard. I think we sort of speculated maybe it was him, in that episode, and then we get confirmation that it was Boone. But by this point, Ana Lucia is so paranoid. She's like, "No, it's the others. Get off that radio."
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously this is post the death of Goodwin. They've had their big scrap, and uh, so her paranoia is at full alert. Um, and this is where we see again the Echo and Ana Lucia dynamic, where Ana Lucia is down at the river and she completely breaks down, and Echo breaks his silence. I think it's 40 days, isn't it? So it'd be 40 days and 40
Days,
nights.
yeah.
The old Josh Hartnett movie, of course, uh, which is everything it's based on. Yeah, and she's just convinced that there's no other survivors. There couldn't have been. We're the only lucky ones. So you can understand it. You've been there for nearly 6 weeks, and all you've experienced is loss and terror and paranoia, and especially with what she's went through with Goodwin. Can completely understand her rationale with that.
I do love the sequence between Ana Lucia and Goodwin because they have been positioned as a kind of Jack and Kate, not necessarily in the romantic sense, but in that
Mm,
bond of trust. And then you see them
yeah.
converting, and there's this whole thing with I think they're eating like an apple or something, and or a mango, and there's a knife, and they're like passing the knife to one another in that
Mhm.
mistrust. And then Ana Lucia's cop skills come out, and she gets a little
Yeah.
Columbo hat on, and she's like, "Well, where were you? Because like when you came out of the trees, you were dry, you weren't wet." And it's like, oh, yeah. I mean, he might have infiltrated a little better than Ethan, but he could have at least like, kind of chucked some water on his
That's
face
fun.
before he before he infiltrated them. But it's just a really good scene. And then we do see Ana Lucia. Well, we don't necessarily see, but we know that Ana Lucia is responsible for the death of Goodwin. And I
Mm,
guess from that point, I guess the hopes is that they're going to be a little bit safer. Um, with Goodwin, Goodwin being gone. And I guess obviously with Goodwin being gone, like we've had no deaths at all on Lost, and then suddenly two come along at once. So life after Lost. So we've got two actually. We've got Nathan. We should probably talk about Nathan. He's played by Josh Randall. He's kind of like lots
Mm.
of one episode guests, like he did on Lost. Lots of one episode things, I think.
Yeah. Because he was a Scrubs guy. He was an Elliot boyfriend in Scrubs, I'm pretty sure,
Ah,
at one point.
maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure he was an
Um,
Elliot
yeah,
boyfriend in Scrubs.
he's in The Event, Grey's Anatomy, Grimm, Castle. Most recently, he has been in 46 episodes of Station 19, playing a character called Sean Beckett. So, like, he's found something that's stuck. And
Mm.
Goodwin is played by Brett Cullen, who
Can
pre-Life Unlost.
can I
Uh,
say, if once we'll go into the, I'm going to take a guess with him because I recognise his face. Is he briefly in The Dark Knight Rises?
he is, yes,
He is.
yes,
Yes, he's the drunk governor in the bar. Yes, I knew I
yes.
recognised him.
But pre-Lost, he was actually a backing vocalist on Meatloaf's song "Life Is a Lemon and I Want My Money Back,"
Aye,
which
fair enough.
is a random deep cut. Um, and he's also sticking with Meatloaf. He's also in the music video for the Meatloaf song "I'd Lie for You and That's the Truth." It's like the one with like the Indiana Jones music video, and he's the
Okay.
Indiana Jones. He's the Indiana Jones character.
Okay.
Lots of TV, lots of TV,
Mm.
and as you say, yep, he is the congressman in The Dark Knight Rises. But he's also sticking with Batman. He's also Thomas Wayne in Joker.
Gee. Oh God.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, maybe there's not credited on that anymore after the second one, but God, I didn't even realise that. I've
Yeah,
watched Joker a few times, the first one, still never seen the second and have no interest, but
I do
um,
appreciate how you're like, I know him, he's the drunk guy, like it's like briefly in this one, and then the
yeah,
other one where he's got a big character arc, you're like, nah, don't know.
no, no. The Dark Knight Rises is a movie I have watched more times than I'd like to. I've had a night out, then I would come home and I would stick on Dark Knight Rises because it was just nonsense and I loved it. And some of it was filmed in Scotland. So yeah, just come home from a night out and stick on a casual 3 hour movie. And it's Selena Kyle takes him in and there's a big shootout in the bar because she's got the trade off with the fingerprints and everything with the wee weird guy that's got the kind of froggy mouth. Uh, and I could probably brief if yeah, that's a spin off. Me just going through scene by scene the Dark Knight Rises, it would probably take about 6 hours. um, for a 3 hour movie. But yeah, he's got a Hawaiian shirt on, I'm sure.
Nice. But yeah, and then obviously back to the events on the island, kind of once we've had
Mm,
this Goodwin reveal and then sort of finding the hatch and talking to Boone on the radio, we then have this, and I'm really sorry, to the people that made this episode, this really moody cheesy montage of like the events
mm,
that we have seen. So like we see Cindy and Libby see Jin wash up on shore, and then suddenly it's silent montage, really moody, like drums the do of them, throwing the boys in the pit, and then them in the rain, and it's it's obviously flashing you up to date because obviously we as a viewer know what has happened on like day 42 to 48 or whatever. Um,
mm.
but I just think it's
Yeah.
very cheap handled. I think there's a better
Y-
way to do that.
You can literally show Jin coming up on the shore and then cut to
Exactly.
her shooting Shannon. Like the weird
Exactly.
and the kind of semi slow mo. It was
Yes.
it felt more like a season recap at the start of a new series than 7 episodes in. It was very strange creative choice. You could have just had Jen going others and then bang, shot, Shannon inside. Like, we know what's happened. We didn't need the recap. It was the last episode, kind of, or the first 6 anyway. Yeah, but a bit pointless.
Yep, then that sort of brings us back round to where we were at the end of Abandoned, with how our islanders going to feel about the new islanders accidentally killing one of their own. It's definitely not the best way to make friends, I don't feel.
No, and especially if there's evidence of others, and our islanders, the original islanders, know about them, kind of, and have an inkling towards them. They're not going to be very trusting Ana Lucia, or maybe even Echo, even though he's like the nicest man. Maybe him and Locke will have some sort of bond, very spiritual people. And I could 100% see Locke trying to recruit him, because that's the type of muscle you'd want on your side if you're going to have to face off against something that Locke feels he might have to face off against. Yeah, it's going to be paranoia, as you said, the anger with Saeed, and I can't ever see Saeed and Ana Lucia having a positive relationship, even if they can have a working one in the future.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing Echo and Lot interact. I'm looking forward to
Mm.
Jack's reaction of seeing Ana Lucia, because we know that they met in the airport before the flight. I'm looking forward to Kate's reaction to Jack seeing Ana Lucia, knowing that because they were quite flirty in that interaction and in the
Yeah,
airport. They were talking about like meeting for a drink, like on they remembered each other's like seats so they could meet up for a drink like on the flight. So I'm interested to see how Kate handles that. And
mm.
I don't necessarily feel that we know enough about Libby to kind of feel like who she's. I mean, she seems to be chatting away to Michael. Um, and yeah, obviously the big thing, I guess, would be Bernard and Rose. Rose is going to be like,
Yeah,
I told you. Like,
yeah,
everyone's sort of been drifting towards John Locke as being this like magic font of knowledge, but Rose knew. She knew that Bernard was not dead.
yeah, yeah, and that'll be a form of positivity on a otherwise bleak time that everyone seems to be having, apart from the party snacks they had that one night. Um, Interesting to see how they react. Obviously, apart from the fact that Ana Lucia's murdered Shannon, but Shannon's death, because she's been a very isolated character.
Mm.
Her brother died. Well, he was in the majority of season one, but he died fairly early in terms of island life. Um, and she had kind of attached herself to Saeed, and that was most interactions that we've seen. So they're going to be devastated. Someone that survived a plane crash is then be shot dead. Obviously, like, that's not going to be a nice thing to have to deal with. But in terms of actual emotions towards her, it'd be interesting to see how that goes.
Yes, and hopefully it will address some of these things, and it won't take. We're not going to go back to fillers, because as we say,
Mm,
these couple of episodes, particularly the second episode, it has sort of ramped up a few things. There's a bit more excitement. We know their backstory now. We know that the others were directly interested, because of course we haven't mentioned during that conversation. Goodwin tells Ana Lucia that the reason they took those people were because they were good,
mm,
um, which is interesting. Obviously, children, yeah,
yeah,
that children are innocent and stuff. So you get that, and you then wonder if one would assume that Ethan was tasked with doing a similar thing of creating a list, and he
yeah,
only deemed Claire as good, or Claire and Walt.
yeah,
So, which to be fair, as we've discovered so far, so many of the original Islanders have murdered people that, yeah, okay, maybe they shouldn't be on the good list.
yeah. The thing is, we haven't seen the flashbacks from the other survivors, so whether we see that in the future could be a bit different. And you know, Locke is a. They didn't try and take Locke. Locke, would you say he, before he was on the island, was a good person? He's certainly not a. I think he's a certainly misunderstood and mistreated person, and determined person. Depends what I suppose what they see as being how they determine good, and do they have a full history into how do they know they're good? Like that's the thing. Maybe because the whole thing with season one and Ethan trying to get the baby was taking the child because the child's special, but we were obviously wrong about what child it was. So how do they know there's a special child, and how did Ethan get it so wrong that it was, or was he just trying to take a baby? You know, it's the future and all that.
There's still some mysteries. I don't feel they're quite as what's in the hatch, but there's still some
Mm,
mysteries sort of percolating, and I feel that hopefully we are on an upward trajectory for the foreseeable. So
mm.
yes, I think that's us done on these two episodes. We are going to take a little break while Andy goes off on a plane and hopefully doesn't end up trapped on a mysterious island with polar bears and smoke. Although, if anyone could, you should be prepared by now.
Yeah, definitely. But also, my incredible fear of flying is just elevated with that sentence. So
I'm
that's
so
good.
sorry.
That's a good way to send me off. Terrified of flying, but yeah, I might crash. So that's excellent. Yeah. No, yeah, I'm going to Sun Air Climbs for a few weeks. So recording dates are put back a wee bit, but uh, there is bears in the north of Italy, just not polar bears. So maybe bump into something mysterious and weird, and as long as I get to eat some good food and drink a lot of wine before I go, I'm quite happy. It's all right. It's all good.
I will just be staying on this island, which is currently just melting. So, I feel like I am on the island with the islanders. I feel that kinship towards them. Just have to go and step outside and be like, yep, nope, I would not last on a desert island at all. I mean, I walked for 30 minutes to the cinema today and was like, I'm going to burn. So I would not fare well on the island. But yes,
Mm.
I digress. That is it for this week's episode. We will be back after a short break. In the meantime, catch up. Find out the journey to date. Maybe watch a little bit ahead to be a bit informed when we do come back. And yeah, please do give us a like, rating, and follow wherever you are listening and watching to it. Listening or watching us. And yeah, and until next time, watch for the others.